What's going on, everybody? This is Misfit, and welcome back to OverTakes. And today we are going to continue with our team previews. We are going to talk the Guangzhou Charge, the Hangzhou Spark, and the Houston Outlaws. We do have a little bit of news too. We're going to cover really quick. Apologize, as you can hear in my voice a little bit. I do have I've been sick for the last few days, and which is why I haven't done any content. Trying to mitigate that and talk about Overwatch League is not the easiest thing to do. Anyway, but before we dive in, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. All your support's greatly appreciated. And if you're new, thanks a lot for joining me. I do Overwatch League content 2 or 3 times a week. This week we're going to have a lot more because, I was sick last week, so I'm going to have a couple more updates because we're getting close, guys. We are a week away or so, week and a half from the start of the season. So, yeah, I'm ready to go. We got the beta dropping on Tuesday, I believe. Yes, Tuesday it would be. Today is Saturday where I'm recording. So, yeah, hopefully a bunch of us get in and it's fun. Obviously, we had alpha stuff. We'll talk more about that after we get over the team previews. I'm sure you guys have been watching all the videos and all that stuff. It's great to see new content and all that. I'm super psyched for the league after watching some of the videos about what's going on. Let's get going. We're going to talk news first. Mayhem are the team that we're going to talk about here. They released Mirror right before I released my last video. I guess it didn't work out with Mirror. I don't know all the details or whatever, whatnot, what have you. But they released him and they picked up Eggsy. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of talk about why they released Mirror that early. Well, there's a lot of different things that could go on. He might not have synergy with the team. There's a whole lot of things. Who knows what happened? It is what it is. They decided to move on, and they picked up Eggsy because I believe they feel like they're going to need another hit scan player. And getting someone of Eggsy's caliber is a pretty good get. I think it improves them a little bit. I think it makes their DPS rotation look a lot better. It's going to be paramount, and from what we've seen of the alpha and what people have said, to have really good, cracked DPS players. And Eggsy's one of those guys, so that's going to help the Mayhem out a lot. And I like the pickup. I think it's going to be great. As a Mayhem fan, obviously, picking up someone of that caliber really makes me happy. A little bit more hope for what they could do. I rated them in the middle, lower part of NA, and that's more hopium from a fan point of view than probably realistically. But the addition of Eggsy definitely improves their chances a lot. And I'm glad he got another chance in the Overwatch League too, because, last year kind of sucked for him. He got hurt, and now he's ready, and no one picked him up early. And here he is. He's back in. So, fantastic for Eggsy. Great for the Mayhem. I think it's going to work out really well for them. It doesn't change too much of what I think just because of the gaps in the other spots on their team, but it could improve them with his carry potential and all that kind of thing. Okay, so we're going to get back into team previews. Here we go. We're going to talk about our next team on the list, the Guangzhou Charge. Okay, Guangzhou last year, very disappointing. They had one stage where they were kind of okay, but overall not great at all. They didn't really have super high expectations. We thought they would be kind of okay, kind of a middle-of-the-pack team, but they were terrible. Let's just be honest. They got rid of not many players. They got rid of Mandu, Kariv, and Mike Haley, and Jihoon. Definitely they thought their biggest problem was their supports, and they might not be wrong there. Mandu was not great. Kariv was not great. This team was just focused around Choi Se-Wan. Choi Se-Wan was their main guy, and he did all the heavy lifting, the hard work, whatever you want to call it. Krong, who looked good in 2020, did not look as good in 2021. I don't know if it was the supports or what it was. But he did not live up. So they just were not as good. So they end up picking up for 2022. Let's go down the roster. So we'll start with the supports because they picked up 2 new guys. They picked up Molly and on Flex, and they picked up Unique. Unique was on T1 main support. I don't know a ton about him, but he does a lot of your standard main support stuff. Mercy Lucio. Brigitte, of course, and then Molly, who was on Chengdu and looked pretty good there. He basically sat on the bench behind Izayaki. Molly was on their backup on Shanghai, and now he comes over to Guangzhou. I think this is a good pickup. I don't know, like I said, I don't know too much about Unique. He can't be any worse than Mondu. Let's be frank about that. This support line looks way better right now than their support line last year. And a lot of the other guys, now let's dive into DPS. They brought in Develop, who was also on the bench. We did not see, I think he played one map for Shanghai. And they have Eileen and Choi Se-won. That's not a bad lineup, really, if you think about it. It looks good, but is it up to the level of some of the other guys? Eileen looked pretty good last year. Choi Se-won's are insane. And Develop, it feels like will be kind of their hard hit scan, has a tracer in his back pocket as well, which is interesting because usually your hard hit scans don't have that. It gives them a little versatility. If you're running a DPS line with Choi Se-won and say Develop, got an option to play tracer and something else if it's a meta where you have projectile / tracer thing. That would be good. And also, he complements Eileen's character pool, hero pool, pretty well. I mean, Eileen has done some good things in the past. He looked pretty good for them last year on points. He's kind of, I'm assuming, going to be like not your wacky hero, but your Doomfist, Sombra-y kind of guy. Long range, too. He's done some long range stuff in the past. I remember vaguely that he did a little bit of that. Okay, we'll move on to the tanks, where we have Rio coming back and Krong coming back as well. They're pretty standard. I mean, they're not going to wow you with any kind of thing that they do. They're also not going to be terrible. Krong has the potential to be really, really good. We saw that in 2020. He was fantastic. But they're very average across the board. If you look at down the line, outside of Choi Se-won, everybody's kind of like, yeah, they're okay. Yeah, they're pretty good. There's like a lot of just kind of, oh yeah, they're not terrible. That's the whole thing with this team. But the problem is that even the Valiant have upgraded. So have, I mean, Shanghai. We don't know what's going on with Chengdu, but Chengdu has upgraded. Current roster, not the potentially what could happen if they sell people off and all that stuff. And Hangzhou is kind of in there, the same, which we're going to talk about them in a minute. I don't feel like this team is anything to write home about. Are they bad? No. Are they good? No, they're not. They're average all across the board. I feel like this team is, in a scenario in the Pacific region where you have potentially three really good teams in Shanghai, Chengdu, and Seoul. If Hangzhou can not Hangzhou their way through the season like they do every year with the talent that they have, and the Valiant are better, I don't see them finishing. Maybe they finish above the Valiant. I think they could give some teams some fits. It just doesn't feel. They don't feel like they're going to be anything to write home about. They're a tale of average. And unfortunately, a tale of average in a 7-team division is going to be bottom of that. So yeah, I really didn't have too much to say about them. Last year they were disappointing. I think 2019 they were better than advertised. Or 2020, I should say. I thought they played above what they should have. I think this team is going to be okay. I don't see them doing anything spectacular. Like I said, they might give some teams some fits. Could they take a game from Chengdu or Seoul or maybe Shanghai at a point? Maybe. I'm not counting on it. I think them and Hangzhou, who we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, their seconds or in a little bit, are going to fight for that, potentially get into the playoff scenario as a fourth team. Maybe the Valiant give them a little bit of a battle in that too. I see them towards the bottom of APAC, and I kind of see them overall wise. I would see them kind of like I rated the Mayhem, in that I don't think that they would get any higher than at the time rating the Mayhem. I don't see them getting any higher than like a 6 spot. If everything went right, they had the perfect meta. Choi Se-won pops off, and they rip through a few teams that they shouldn't. I see them more in the 9 to... If we're talking overall, I would probably put them in the bottom, like 15 on, like 15 to 20, somewhere in there. They're just, everybody's upgraded, they haven't, is really what it boils down to. But in APAC, I see them comfortably in that area below Seoul, somewhere, or Chengdu, out of the top 3. 4 to 7, I think in APAC is a generalization for them that we're going to go with. So that's my thoughts on Guangzhou. I didn't have a lot to say about them. I'm not too high on them. Nothing grabs me good or bad wise with them. They're just so average that there really wasn't a lot to say about them. So let's dive into the Hangzhou Spark. All right, Hangzhou, coming off last year where they had one good stage and were kind of mediocre and fell apart. Hangzhou'd the whole thing, and they had a lot of talent and didn't show for it. They had a lot more talent than the last team we talked about too, Guangzhou. But they've reworked some stuff. They got rid of, let's talk about who left the team. Coldest, Mika, IDK, and Xiaomin Su all departed from the team. Now let's go over their new roster. It's a very, very large roster. They have 3 tanks, 4 DPS, 2 supports. So they bring in a new support team, Irony and Super Rich. Super Rich is really good. I've looked him up and watched a couple things, and probably the best main support that's in China other than maybe 1 or 2 other people. So that's a good pickup. Alfie's really good. Pineapple's really good. But let's go down the line with this. So, tank-wise, they hold on to Guangzhou, and they bring in Ligue, who was with, I believe he was with Chengdu for a hot minute. They kept Bernard from last year. The tank line's going to look good. They definitely have all their bases covered. They have 3 guys. I think it looks pretty good. Let's talk DPS. They keep Architect in. They keep Shy. Shy was their pop-off guy, their carry all of last year. He looked really good. I liked what I saw from him. And let's talk the other 2 guys they got brought in, Pineapple and Alpha Yi, 2 rookies, also very well known, very as far as in contenders in China. And Alpha Yi's been around for a while. He's with GC Busan back in 2018. So these guys are decent. Support wise, we have a whole new look support line for Hangzhou, Irony and Super Rich. Also, I think this is going to be really good. Young guys. They have a good mix of young and old, and they're doing a mixed roster with Chinese, a lot more Chinese players and Korean players. One of the biggest problems, and I'm not probably the first one to say this, but I see it as most of their coaching staff is Korean. So communication, and I think communication was a big problem last year. We talked about it. Also, the guys going in and out and the amount of coaches and all that stuff last year kind of screwed them up. I think it could screw them up again this year. I think they have probably outside of the top 3 that we talked about, they're on par with some of those teams with talent for sure. I think they can do a lot. I'm going into 2022 in Hangzhou with I'm positive on their talent. I don't know what's going to happen with the other factors, coaching, the mixed language, all the stuff. Some of that stuff is really bothersome because it screwed them up in the past, I guess. You're looking at their past and you're going, these are all the things that were the problems in the last 2 years. And they seem to be potentially the problem this year. But I'm going to say this. Their DPS line is cracked. You got Shy, Pineapple, Alpha Yi, and Architect. I don't know if you even see Architect play with those 3 guys that are there. Tank line, same thing. Guangzhou, he's fantastic. He's the face of their team. He does, obviously, Winston really good. Ryan is decent enough, does decent enough ball and stuff like that. But you have enough guys to cover all the bases. Ligue and Bernard, I don't know. Me personally, I'm looking at Guangzhou or Ligue, maybe Bernard for some specialty type of thing, coming in and playing tank. But because you really don't know. I mean, obviously we saw some of the alpha stuff, and it seems like main tanks are down, so you might want to have a couple of off tanks to split the duties. Who knows? I mean, they definitely have a full roster. I think their support line is going to be good enough. Super Rich can flex a little bit, so if you do get in a double flex, it doesn't seem like it from what people are saying, but I think you're covered here. I think they look pretty good. I'm looking for, I'm looking at Shy again and saying, hey, he carried last year in a DPS heavy game. Get him out there and, let him do what he does and, go from there with the others in the rotation. You got a bevy of guys. You can run different comps. See, this is where it gets into some of the stuff that you guys know that I don't like. You have so many players that you're doing me, well, on push, we're going to run Shy Architect. On X, on control, let's run Alpha Yi and Shy, or however you want to work it, or, depending on meta and whatever. You're going to have a lot of, because you got a lot of guys with overlapping heroes and stuff like that, and maybe you're going to focus certain guys with certain things. It just seems like a lot of players, a lot of things going on. I have high expectations for them. I think they could fight to be in that top 3 if the peripheral stuff doesn't get in the way. Talent-wise, mechanics-wise, and I've been talking about mechanics and how important they are. They're gonna mean a lot in this game, especially when, early on when you're relying on more mechanics and metas and stuff like that. So I think they're okay mechanically, and synergy also could be interesting with this team. Not language, but just rotating players in and out, and with the amount of players that they have. But I am looking for a good season from the Spark. I think it's time. I think they're due. I think they have the players that can do it. If they can organize and run this team properly this year, they have a lot of potential to do some damage. They could crack that, be up there with the Souls, the Chengdus, and Shanghai. If Chengdu, the thing happens where that everyone's saying they might be selling off players and this and that because their parent company's losing money, I definitely think they're top 3. And in that case, I think they're fighting for them. I also see a scenario where they could finish below Guangzhou if the things don't work out, if the synergy doesn't work out. Like I said, mechanically, game skill-wise, this team is top-notch. It's getting it together and putting it out there to do the job. That's going to be the hard part. But like I said, I see them finishing, honestly, APAC-wise, up into 3-4. I see them middle of the pack overall. If you throw them into like the whole conglomeration of the whole league, somewhere in the middle, 9-10. I'd see that they have enough talent to do that. Overall, they're way better than some of the teams that we've talked about. They would be better than Florida, and a bunch of the other teams that you expect. Guangzhou, the Valiant, Vancouver, Paris. I can keep going. I think they might gatekeep that middle for the whole league. As far as APAC goes, I think they're definitely in that talk for top 3, top 4. All right, let's talk about the final team on today's episode. We're going to talk about the Houston Outlaws. I also would like to apologize again for my voice. It's a little cracky and weird. I had like a throat laryngitis-y thing, so I made it pretty far without things getting too wacky. But final team here, let's talk about the Houston Outlaws. Last year was probably the best year for the Outlaws over the course of the 4 years that they played in the Overwatch League. They did not make any tournaments or anything like that, but they had a really good regular season record as far as finals. They didn't go to Hawaii or anything like that. They did really well. They reworked their roster again. So let's talk about what they got going on. So they got rid of a bunch of guys from last year. They released Dreamer, Happy, Crimzo, Juby, Jangu, and of course they had a couple other guys leave earlier in the year. So yeah, they did well last year. Now this year's roster, let's go over that. Let's talk. All right, DPS first. We have Dante. They bring in Pelican from Atlanta, and they sign Merritt from O2 Blast. DPS line's looking pretty good to me. Anytime you got Pelican and Dante, and then you throw in Merritt, who's decent to above average, actually, from Korean contenders. That looks good. The elephant in the room with this team, Piggy, solo tanking. And then the supports, we have Iris and Lastro. We do not have a main support on this team. So, let's talk about what we got. All right, DPS, let's talk about the best part of this team first. we got Dante, Pelican, and Merritt. Dante, obviously, we know Tracer, Sombra. He can do some other stuff too. I mean, if that's not all, he's good on the Echo. He can play Mei. He even can, bust out a Genji here and there. He did that, when anytime they needed it in the past. Then you throw in Pelican. Him and Pelican together. Obviously, we know Pelican can play just about anything at a high level. Tracer, Genji, he's done Mei, Sombra, Echo. Kind of the same hero pool-ish as Dante, but a little bit different, and it leaves you open for comps where if you're running a Genji Tracer dive. I keep bringing this up because I think it's going to be prevalent. I think seeing how running a Doomfist dive that some of these guys are doing, just watching some of the guys play Doomfist with Genji Tracer, because there's no barriers. Orisa doesn't have a barrier. The only thing you got to worry about is Sigma and Reinhardt right now. So they have open play. So I think we're going to see some of that. Merritt is going to be your hit scan dude. Your hard hit scan. Widowmaker, Cassidy, Ashe. Probably Soldier, because Soldier seems to be meta-ish. Once again, no barriers, constant damage. Tac Visor has no blocking points right now. At least, as far as we can see. I'm excited about the Overwatch 2 stuff, so I keep talking about what I've seen. I like this. I really, really like what's going on with this team. Now let's talk about support line. We have Iris and Lastro. They're running double flex. And Iris last year played a lot of Baptiste. I don't know if they brought him in for that. I mean, he obviously can play Ana pretty well, and he has played some Zen. But he spent a lot of time playing BAP, and he was really good. I mean, he worked in Atlanta's comps, and it did everything they needed it to do. So we have that. And then Lastro, who has a great hero pool too. Zenyatta, Ana, plays some Moira, plays BAP. I think you got your bases covered here, but the problem is there's no main support. So what are you going to do? You're running double flex. I mean, yeah, it's possible. It's probable that you could do something like that in the new game. One of the comps that seems to be rolling around is Lucio seems to be pretty important because of the speed and the ability to solo, take on solo engagements, do things, AoE healing, things like that. Same thing with Moira. You have that covered with Lastro, the Moira that is. But what are you going to do if you want to run Lucio? So does that mean that these two guys learn it? Jake is retired, so you don't have him. He's full-time coaching, so he's not going to Lucio or Mercy or anything like that. I don't know what they're going to do with that, and that's a point of concern for me. Now let's go on to the tank. We have Piggy. Piggy was great last year. Great off-tank, Sigma, Diva, Roadhog, Zarya, does them all pretty decently, especially Diva, Sigma. Those are his two mainstays. He played some Zarya too, and that wasn't bad either. But I just don't feel like you have everything covered with Piggy going in here. Another point of concern. Are they going to sign players, do what the Mayhem did? They kind of waited out the alpha and was like, you know what? Let's bring in Eggsy. I don't think we need Mirror. I mean, that could have been a myriad of things, but I think the first stage the first tournament cycle is going to be odd, to say the least, and chaotic. We're going to see a lot of weird things, comps, maybe not comps. Guys playing, what they're comfortable on and trying to make it work to start and then see where things kind of flesh themselves out. But overall, let's talk about this. I see Houston. I'm really bullish on this team this year. I like their roster. They have good players at every position. They just don't have a couple of key components. Being another tank and a main support, I'm a little afraid of that. I think they're top 4 with those. I think that they're still in that range, I think, even without it. I think they can work around it with the talent that they have on this team. I mean, you have Pelican, you have Dante, and you have Iris and Lastro, who are great. Merritt's good. Your whole team is top-notch players. I think there's plenty of talent. I think they are not as versatile as I would like them to be. going in a new game as far as flexibility on the tank and support line, which is going to be important. I mean, you can't expect Piggy to pick up all the... See, that's one of the things. I don't like the solo tank thing. I think you need two. You need a couple guys to cover all the bases and all that and roll with that. Having one guy try to cover 6-8 heroes, potentially more, is asking a lot. Especially when you get something like Doomfist in there. Yeah, you probably can have one of the other guys play Doom, but what happens if, you have to switch up? I'm a fan of what they're doing. I think in NA, they're going to be fighting to be in tournaments. I just think I think it's going to be a lot like last year if they don't get a couple of more players in here. They're going to be fighting to be, they're going to be doing well. They're going to have a good base record, a regular season record, but when it gets to tournament time, other teams are just going to be better because they can cover different parts of metas, heroes, things like that. But I do see them finishing pretty high in NA. Like I said, NA with 13 teams, I see them 4 to 6, maybe punch up to third if everything falls into place. If. Overall, I see them in that top quadrant, top 5, somewhere in their top 6. I would give them that. They're in the top half of the league for sure, overall. I'm a little wary of the roster size. The talent is there. Like I said, you have Pelican, Dante, Iris, Lastro. This is a good team. Piggy, Merritt. Everybody's on this team, top-notch player. Are they the best in their positions? No. Pelican, probably, yeah. He's top 5. It all comes down to, can they cover all of the heroes that are going to be necessary in Overwatch 2? I am going to still keep them up pretty high. Not my normal thing with Houston, I know. I usually rate them pretty low and become surprised towards the end of the year. So yeah, that's where I think Houston's going to be. Anywhere from, like I said, they're in the 4 to 6 range NA. Definitely top 10 overall over all 20 teams. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Me and my cracking voice are going to call it a day. Thanks a lot for joining me. All esports are greatly, greatly appreciated. Next episode, we are going to hit... I'm going to be pumping them out this week, guys, so get ready. Next episode, we got London, the LA Gladiators, and the Los Angeles Valiant. We're going to be doing those 3 teams next. And then we have 2 more episodes, and then we'll be diving into previews for the season coming up. Thanks a lot for all your support, guys. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. If you're new, thanks a lot for joining me. If you could hit a like, hit a subscribe, do all the YouTube things, that would be fantastic. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next one.